as well. So just you can have it as a follow-up later on if you wish. So I sent out a link, and it's just a quick self-assessment. There's 3 sections in it. There's 16 questions, and it takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And it's just, if you go through, you'll end up getting a score. It's just for yourself completely. You get a score, and you get an email afterwards. Check that it might go into spam, but on that email, then there's a PDF report. And depending if you'd answered no or not applicable, you'd actually get suggested actions then based on the answer you gave to particular questions. But there's 16 of them there, a bit of fun. That's all. It's completely your own information. But I would suggest maybe having a look at that as well if you'd like at some stage. So what we're going to look at here is, I suppose we start off looking at some historical incidents. How management system works is just briefly, when we talk about 45,000, I realize in these calls as well, not a lot of people understand the different elements that exist inside. And so I'm just going to go very quickly through that. And then I'm going to talk about the secrets of engagement, because if you're in larger organizations, really the whole thing is, this isn't a safety function. Okay, this is something that requires different departments, different divisions of businesses to come together to manage contractors, put up a proper firewall around your business. 5 circles of compliance are the 5 things, as I said at the name of the webinar, just some pointers for you. Technology traps, and then we're going to give you some tips as well. So as I said, questions as we go, if you wish, put them in the chat, or if you want to hang on to the end as well, that's okay too. Obviously, this information is just purely for informative purposes. We're helping companies doing this for helping them risk management in general for to nearly 2.5 decades inside our own business. So as I said, it's just, these are our suggestions inside there. Love to link in with you if you are on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great network for EHS people as well, professionally around the world. So I think that's if you're on it, be great to connect with you. So what a management system is, I suppose, or what business are you? Typically have a business, and we're going to be looking at it in terms of the 4 walls around your business. And then also how we want to create a firewall around the business to let the good contractors come in and keep the bad contractors out. Where it goes wrong, if you search the web, you'll find plenty of examples of it, but specifically the Flint water crisis back in 2015, the Deep Water Horizon, which is probably more famous one, BP contracted drilling services, Transocean and Halliburton, and inside there, the 3 companies were found to have contributed to the particular disaster. Grenfell Tower, the cladding inside the building in London, and then the other one, and the West Fertilizer incident as well. So the point really being that incidents do happen, and particularly happen when if you don't manage contractors. And ultimately, I'm going to say here, if you don't treat your contractors the same way as your employees, okay, the outcomes can be poor. ISO standards in general, what we have over here, excuse me, is so I'm just going to change it just one setting as well, just on the camera. What we have with the ISO standards is that there's a whole range of them out there, and we're just interested in the standard that pertains specifically to ISO 45000. So that's one for health and safety. But if you look at it, there are standards that are created by this organization to help improve the way people do things. Okay, so 45,001 is the health and safety one, 14,000 is environmental. And as of April last year, there were 24,000, nearly 25,000 standards. They specify how to do things. They tell you you should do things or you shall do things, but they don't tell you how. And that's what we're going to cover in some of the presentation today. They're often part of a procurement process as well. So while they are voluntary, they're not necessarily voluntary for certain businesses. If you want to work with them, it's implied that you have a safety system and that people are already that your system is certified outside as well. So the next one then, what we look through, so you may have a system, you may have a safety manual and then related procedures and records. If we pick up the ISO 45001 standard, you'll mention then you notice that there are over 20 places within the standard, 20 clauses that specifically mention the need to manage contractors. And I have them on a link for you summarized there as well. You'll have that link in the presentation as well, so you can get it after. But I'll basically be going through what they are and what some ways what you need to do about it. So if we look at the standard, there are 10 sections overall, and its first 3 are kind of more for information, terms and conditions, scope. Clause 4, context of the organization, all the way down to clause 10. they're the business end of it, and it's within these clauses. They may or may not have references to managing contractors. So just before I go into it, normally we get asked the question, just how do all these elements come together? I'm just going to go, it's a very simple scenario. Do you know who your employees are? Do you know what jobs they do? Do you know what tasks they perform? Which is obviously a little bit trickier. In jobs to do is easy, but tasks and the SOPs. From that then, do you have an organizational chart in place? And off that organizational chart, have you determined what training and competency is needed? Because people are at work or at home as well these days, they're performing work, and basically because they're performing work or doing work, they're exposed to hazards, or they can create hazards. And down below here, it's these hazards where the health and safety hazards we're looking at here this afternoon. So specifically, then there's legislation out there. Are you aware what legislation pertains to your business? And typically that legislation then will say to you, you need to do a risk assessment. And it's the final step of the risk assessment here, the risk control, that hierarchy of controls, that basically is the rest of your management system. So if you look at our system overall, and we have these components in place, which most people will have, as I said, these are the main clauses in ISO 45000. So it's a very logical standard. It's nice. All the key components are there. And I just want to show you, if you can't really read the standard from clause 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and try and understand it, and just give me a slightly different approach in here. You want to do audits in your system, you want to have corrective actions, and you so that on an ongoing basis to check things are okay. And you'll also have to do a management review with the senior management team at least once a year. Sometimes incidents happen, okay? We want to have an umbrella over our system, which is we want to be able to determine what potential emergencies could arise. And then if they did arise, make sure that we're prepared for them and we can respond properly. So, and if we do have incidents, we want to have an incident reporting system and an incident investigation as well. We want to manage change, and it's really the bit around change which is the most important, because change is basically where when we generally bring in contractors a lot as well. So it could be changes to people, products, processes, materials, and so forth inside. So larger organizations will typically have a management of change procedure. ISO 45001 wants you to have that. So when your day-to-day operations are there, if you're doing something new, it just says risk assess it in advance, risk assess it as you're doing the change, and risk assess it afterwards. So we also have a health and safety policy within our systems, and that's basically an aspiration as to where we want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. And also we have safety objectives, which are basically how we're going to achieve the policy objectives, for as an example. The glue that holds it all together is document control. We need documents and procedures, and these documents and procedures, they just have to have a name and nomenclature system, and then control like revision 1, 2, 3. And the other bit that came in with the revision of the standard back in 2015 is context of the organization. So that's like a risk assessment of your business, looking at the upstream and downstream effects outside of the 4 walls of your business. What are the factors that may have an impact on you as well? So that said, we'll just look through here with this, as I said, the risk control, the eliminate substitute engineering, admin, training, MRP, these controls, they link out to the rest of your management system. So the important thing to realize is that if you do a good risk assessment, you'll have good risk controls, and therefore the rest of your management system should be falling into place. If you do a bad risk assessment, you probably won't have risk controls and all the risk controls you need in place, and therefore you're going to probably have gaps in your system as well. So it's the risk assessment is always core to most of the things we do in the system. If I look at the clauses of ISO 45000, then what's that telling us? Well, as I said, it's clauses 4 to 10 down here. And what we want to do here is look at where are contractors specifically mentioned inside there. Okay, so you can come through and look at context of the organization, clause 4. Yes, it is mentioned it, but when we come through some of the other clauses, they're not mentioned. So I'm just going to go through some of the places now where it's not mentioning it, and we come back to that table. You'll have it anyway afterwards in your copy. And some of the ones are inside in the policy. Now, it's very easy to amend your health and safety policy, okay, to take your policy, amend it, and actually then put in to make it kind of come to make it compliant. Okay, so your policies will normally talk about your own employees, but over here what we want to do is just make sure that we have the successive policy requires commitment for all employees, contractors, and visitors. And there's one or two other places we can actually build in contractors to our policy, so the scope of it just doesn't sit as it's an internal document pertaining to your own employees. When it comes to objectives and plans, you probably have safety projects ongoing at any one point in time. And it's just important to try include some projects that where you're engaging with contractors inside there. For example, you might have an objective to improve safety performance. Some of the targets might be to develop a contractor management procedure, okay, or maybe to look at reducing contractor related incidents by 50%. And the plan then is, how are you going to do that? Okay, maybe arrange pre-shutdown meetings or look at incidents in the last 5 years, what happened, and analyze them. So objectives, targets, and plans are basically projects related to health and safety. The objective is general. The plan is a person doing it. It's like a corrective action plan person and stuff. So again, just include something inside there. While it doesn't necessarily mention it in the standard itself, it's not too difficult to do it. And you want to demonstrate to anybody looking in that, yes, you're treating your contractors the same as your employees. The next one, legal and other requirements. You're probably going to have something inside. If you have a good legal register, you're going to have something inside there about it. Typically, it'll come in under construction regulations as an example, but you want to make sure inside there, and particularly in procedure, that you're saying we're identifying all the things affecting our businesses and also the overlap of contractors coming in working for us. So it's an easy one to tick off, but it's just, this is where you want to be aware in your own region. That's why I was asking at the beginning, what part of the world are you dialing in from? What do your own local regulations say? There's a very good company I came across as well in the last year. They do legal registers globally. It's the only company I've seen it. So if that's a challenge for anybody, message me afterwards and I'll give you the name of them. They do really good legal registers and really good self-assessments and everything inside there. Roles and responsibilities is another one, okay, but you need to make sure that you get contractors. So it starts off maybe with your organizational chart and just think somehow how you're going to bring that in. Get contractors knitted in here somewhere, and then start documenting what do you want your contractors to do, okay? So you have to basically think about it, what's the responsibility, and think about it from both sides. Your contractors providing information to you, and that's what we will be looking at with examples of information and so forth. But equally, you as a business, how are you internally going to be managing contractors? And that's what I'm going to be getting to in a while as well, when we look at those kind of examples and operationally how you're going to engage different departments. Monitoring and measurement is another clause. So that's kind of all the things you have to monitor and measure pertaining to your health and safety management system. This is obviously one of the controls within the risk assessment. Okay, and what we want to do here again is just make sure that we have bits inside, contractors kind of feature inside as well, because contractors will probably be doing some of the activities that you are doing under these things. So they might be doing checks on scaffoldings or ladders, or more mundane checks as well for you inside there. And also your incident reporting investigation system, you have to think yourself, if contractors have an incident, are you happy to accept their incident report form and investigation form, or do you want them to use your one and stuff like that? So there's things you can figure out yourself as to what suits your business best. Audits and inspections is another one. So again, while it doesn't necessarily say it, you should include contractors in the scope of your audits / housekeeping inspections at some level. And that may be doing housekeeping inspections on how you're engaging, how contractors are performing on site at the absolute minimum. You should have procedures in place for managing contractors and audit them on a regular basis as well. Okay, clauses where contractors are mentioned. Okay, we're going to come to in a second. One of the last ones here is management review. And I would again just typically for management review in the standard, it gives you a few clauses that it says you should consider. Our approach always is include all the clauses inside there, and specifically just get inside there some metrics or some measures as to how you're managing contractors in your own business, because that's what it's all about. Okay, we want contractors in every single clause the same as we're treating our own employees. Okay, so clauses where contractors are specifically mentioned, as I said, I'll give you that link afterwards as well. But over here, and they're going through some of them, it's in context of the organization. So this is typically like a risk assessment within your business. It's kind of like outside the four walls of your business, what's there that could affect you. And you could look at it. Sometimes we use SWOT analysis, and then we look at it internal or external factors. A very simple kind of example here will be that you have you've identified that you've maybe an over dependence on some contractors. Now, it's perfectly fine to use contractors, okay, especially if you have a skills gap. It's good to use them, but sometimes you may have an over dependence. So just that's how an example of very simple example how something might fit inside there. The next one would be risk assessment. Where that comes in is you have the same hazards, risks, and controls, but what you want to do in the hazard identification is just make sure you identify hazards that pertain to your employees, to visitors, and contractors. So again, I guess most people would have this covered. If not, it's just a hugely important one as well. The next one down here, sorry, is communication. So it does specifically mention contractors. You should come up with kind of two procedures here. Procedure, how you communicate internally within the business. You do meetings where health and safety is done, different type of things. And then how you communicate externally. And you need to think of within those internal, external procedures, how you're mentioning contractors. Obviously, the procedure you have inside there should be there, okay? Your permit to work system is another example. How are you going to manage the incident reports and stuff, and just general communications, how your risk assessments are going to work. That's another bit that should be inside there. Competency, a lot of people get surprised when they hear that, you know, the whole standard today talks about competency and it hardly mentions training. I'm not saying it doesn't talk about training. What I'm saying is it talks about competency, and competency means, have you been trained? Have you got the necessary education and the necessary experience? It's those three factors: competent, education, experience, and training. So training is in there, but it's only kind of part of the puzzle. And you're supposed to check the competency of contractors coming on site. We have a separate webinar on that each month. That's actually coming up in a couple of weeks' time. And there are ways going about how to check competency. I'm going to show you one in a minute as well. But specifically, you could flip the coin here and you can get the contractors to demonstrate to you how they are competent. And that's the way it should work inside there. Emergency preparedness and response. Well, if we look at the wording on this clause, how do you prepare for emergencies? Well, if you do good risk assessments, your good risk assessment should identify those scenarios. It could be fire, spill, explosion, gas leak. And then once you have identified those ones, there's little tricks you can do in the risk assessment to flag the emergencies. But what you want to do then afterwards is how you're going to respond to each situation, and not just a carte blanche in the event of fire. If your risk assessment has identified fire in 26 places around your facility, you want to make sure your procedure is adequate in each scenario in that case as well. So again, contractors can come in and they can certainly lead to emergency situations on site. And so it's how you're controlling that. Equally, if you have your own incident on site, that may affect contractors. So all of this needs to be considered inside in your plan. Another partner company we work with before is the Andrew, and they do 3D joins. I love these. The fire services love them as well because they do kind of layered 3D joins. So one is the sprinkler system, the hydrant system, gas isolation, the electrical. So all the key things you do, but it's much more visual than a CAD drawing. Okay, and if you have an incident at 3 o'clock in a January morning, you know, when it's snowing or raining and it's dark, people don't want to be going through CAD drawings. They want to have the stuff and give them the right layer. Equally, if you have people coming in like drivers doing deliveries, you can give them a very simple layered one. So I love ways companies come up with to simplify the information that's been shared back. So what clauses mention contractors? The answer is all of them. Okay, well, make it all for yourself. Technically, the standard doesn't say that to you, but we're saying as a hint, you can find a way easy to build in contractors. Think of contractors, they're human beings. They have a right to go home in the evening the same way they arrived in the morning. Think of them like your employees, and you'll be off to a good start that way. So some help doing it. I'll just check there in the chat. If anybody has any questions or anything, please fire them through. Okay, if you want to turn off your mute and your microphone as well, just any questions as we go, please show them out there as well. Just going to come up over here. How can we build a firewall compliance or a compliance firewall around the business? How can we keep the bad ones out? And how can we let the good ones in? How can we do that simply? I'm just going to go through some ideas for you. But first I want to present it just maybe as a chart, because if we want to think about compliance, the first thing we want to do is we want to be in compliance. We want to be over here on the right hand side. Okay. The second thing though we got to do is if you're thinking of it from a health and safety perspective, you're thinking of it from a policeman or a policewoman perspective, and we have to let people know in the organization what needs to happen. Okay, and that's not always easier said than done. So this isn't something the safety department can do on their own. It's not something one person. We have to get engagement across the organization. Okay, now when I say engagement, what do I mean? Well, typically that could be between the health and safety department, who are the policemen and women, facilities and engineering, who are going to be bringing in the vast majority of the contractors, And typically there may be security or reception as well as another one. Okay, so that because they're going to be the first point of contact with the contractors coming on site. There are other ones I'll mention as we go along, but they're the three main ones. So if we don't have much engagement, as in you're kind of going solo and you're not really sure what you should or shouldn't be checking, we're down here and you're in a high risk situation. Okay, we need to figure out at least what we need to check. Okay, and then figure out how we can cross-check this as a combined team approach. We want to get up here. We want to have everybody engaged across the organization, and we want to be sure that what we're checking is adequate. If I come down over here, we might be in a situation where nothing has happened. By grace of God, we're going through. There are no incidents, but we may even know what to look for. But you're doing it yourself. You're kind of just that daily battle and stuff like that. And we put that, I call that the lucky situation. And the last one is up here where you're maybe, you do have engagement, but you're not totally sure. Can I ask this question? Can I not? And, we're asking 3 or 4 questions when should we be asking 15 and stuff like that. So that I call that the Excel approach, just the absolute minimum, and leave a spreadsheet being filled out. So what we want to do is we want to get up here, and even in the happy zone, there's a thing called the circles of compliance. And that's what I'm going to take you through now in terms of how we can do that. Now, if you think of engagement, as I said already, we want to get engagement across the 3 departments. There are some tools or some other bits and pieces maybe that you might like to think about to help improve the engagement. What are the 2 contact points with contractors you may have? What's the first contact point you have with a contractor coming on site? Anybody want to throw that out there? If you have a contractor and they're working for your business, anybody? No? So you can't imagine what will be the first point of contact you will have with a contractor coming on site. So inside, I'll make it easy for you. One of the first points of contact you're probably going to have is with your security department or your reception. Okay, in many organizations. Okay, obviously smaller businesses it might be different. So, but over here, that's typically where it's going to be. And what we want to do then is look at, well, what's happening there. And typically what's going to be happening in this part of the business is we're going to have access control, okay, or visitor management. But what I'm saying to you is if you have all the information about your contractors available somewhere, think of some way of applying that information or using that information when a contractor is swiping in. Okay, we don't need to control visitors in the same way. Okay, we're not checking insurances and licenses and permits, but visitors, but contractors, we should have that information. How do we apply it here? And if you can integrate in with an access control system, that'll make these checks 24/7, 365. The second thing is the permit to work system. Okay, so once the contractor arrives on site and he or she goes down the site and they're doing work, particularly high risk work, you probably have a permit to work system, a work permit, hot work, confined space entry, building in the checks there at that point in time, where you can actually, and thanks Bogdan Brands at the Access Gate Security, absolutely, thanks for that in the chat. The key thing you have with the work permit now is the contractor has gone through, they're about to start work, excuse me. Does your permit system have any way linking back to the data you have about your contractors? Can you make that available such if somebody writes down the name of a contractor, can you check, oh, are they on the system? Are they kind of pre-approved, or is their insurance out of date? Have they done the induction training? Have they got hot work experience? So they're the things that you want to inside there. So they're kind of the 2 physical points of contact inside there. Yes, the thing with the HSE induction, that's true, but that would be before you come on site and you're telling them what to expect. This is where these are kind of where your touch points, the contact points you would have with them. So as we come down here, we're going to look at the 5 circles of compliance. We're going to look at holistically what companies you deal with. Then which employees of these companies will you actually be dealing with when they come on site? You then want to think about your own site requirements. Okay, what do you want? What do you need to measure? We want to think of the registration process. So that's kind of the first contact point with your contractors coming on site, what's happening here. And the last one then is the permit to work system, if it's relevant for a particular contract as well. So with the circles of compliance, in terms of what companies you're dealing with, what we want to know there is, okay, do you have a control list? And when we often help off starting this project, we ended up a company not so long ago, we started with 800 contractors. And we knew immediately, said, not with size of business, said that. So all of a sudden you realize the list included all the contractors from the last 5 or 6 shutdowns, and some contractors from over 10, 15 years on the list. Okay, that's not really a control list. So you want to get your list up to date in terms of who you're dealing with. And it's always dynamic. Somebody might be coming in once off this year and they're not coming back next year, but you need to be on top of it. Then look at what information you want. You want to be looking at least, you want to be getting maybe their policy documents, their manual risk assessments. You want to be getting their insurances as an absolute. One thing about insurances, and some companies don't realize, is that your own insurance policy, and it's worth checking this inside, your own insurance policy will say that if you're bringing a subcontractor on site, you have to check their insurance details are adequate before you bring them on site. Because if you don't, and that subcontractor comes on site and they burn down your building, your own insurance is now null and void because you didn't check their subcontractor. So you have to be super careful. It might be on page 58 of the policy. It might be in font size 2, it might be in white ink in the bottom left, but it's probably in there. It is in most countries. So just check that one out. You're exposed if you're not checking the contractors. So what you'll be doing, you might be checking licenses and permits as well. How are you managing RAMs, risk assessment method statements? Are they coming in at you? Okay. And then are you doing maybe even pre-qual questionnaires before you do business and so forth? So there's a whole range of questions you can consider there. That's why I sent the questionnaire before the meeting, to kind of get you thinking that way as well. Okay. If you go back to the questionnaire you sent earlier, the quick one, the quick score, I think it's called, you'll get that, and it's completely for your own information. The next one is a bit trickier. We want to look at what employees are coming in. Okay, so you think you're working with company ABC, but in actual fact, they subcontracted the work to subcontractor XYZ. Now it's actually XYZ are coming on site. And what's worse, one of the employees of XYZ is sick this morning. So you know what? They went out on the street, they found somebody with a pulse, okay, and they pulled in that person just to get the job done. So this is where it gets hairy. This is where you really need to tighten up on the control. You have to have visibility, not just on your primary contractors, but on your subcontractors, subcontractors. It's up to you to do it. And there's no point relying on somebody else to be doing these checks for you. It's your business, you're in control. What are you checking? Well, certainly you want to be checking competency, and certainly training is the big one. A lot of people will check, but as I said, be careful, because the standard in particular in other places says you have to check competency. So get the contractors to tell you how they're competent. So it's training plus education plus experience. Back to the point somebody mentioned a while ago, Badran, inside there, this is also where you could be looking at providing induction training before they come on site. Okay, so you could be then telling people, these are our standards, this is it. And by the way, you can expect this intervention if you arrive on site and you haven't given us this information. You know what? You're not going to be allowed to work on site today. So you want to get to that point in time with that level of control. So your own site requirements, what are they? You need to go through that yourself. Okay, so I've given you kind of some of them already, your company details, the employee details, what's going to happen, maybe induction training and so forth. And I think induction is also nice because you can talk to the contractor before they even get there, and even when they arrive, where to park. Some facilities, it can take from the car park, it can take 20 minutes to walk to the reception and stuff like that. And even, as I said, is that health and safety? It's not, but it's just making the journey of your people coming in that bit easier. Okay, so, but you want to, I think in the induction training programs, you want to avoid repeating things like how to use a ladder safely, because most people have done these courses already on a statutory basis. You want to make them site specific, because if they use ladders, then they have to demonstrate that to you as an system. So make it relevant site. So make that, and now figure out how are you actually going to communicate that out. There's no point you having it in your PC and then nobody else aware of it inside there. And you have to have cross-departmental agreement. This is what we're checking. So the next one is the registration. If they're coming in, where do they meet? What's happening? Or what type of, what are they asking for? And normally there's a visitor management system inside there. They get a badge. And this is where you could look at maybe automating a link inside there as well for that. And the last one is the permit to work system. So once they're through the gate and they're in working, looking at your permit to work, and is there some way linking it back? But are you going to let contractors use their permit system, or when they're on your facility, must they use yours as well? So that's just, I've seen situations where some contractors refuse point blank to use the client ones. It creates complications. You need to decide it's your facility, and you need to decide what's acceptable in different situations and agree it with them. And so no surprises later on. So I said, all these things, document them, put them down in roles and responsibilities, put them down, and they're from your side in terms of internally how you're going to manage contractors. And one thing I'd say there is that If facilities are bringing them in, health and safety can be facilitators. You're providing the systems and the tools to do this, but the people who bring in the contractors should be checking the data. If you have a online portal or an Excel sheet, whatever, they should be checking the data before they bring in the contractor, because if they bring in somebody, then it should be their problem as well. Okay, so over here, what I want to do is I'm just going to come in and I'm going to just move over here. I'm going to go into the practical example just for those who are joining us late. At least we've gone through just so far. I'll just recap, which is the standard. So I'm just going to come out this for 1 second as well. We've gone through what a management system is. We've gone through the health and safety standard as well, and the ISO 45001. We looked at the clauses where there is a need to manage contractors, and we've actually kind of said to you then actually in effect it's all clauses. Even though all clauses don't mention contractors, you should treat it as such. You need to think of contractors as your as basically your own employees as well. I'm going to show you just maybe three things that we find useful as well. Okay, so we ourselves we provide different tools and technologies around it, but even if we didn't, if you're doing this on Excel, I just want to show you some things that maybe you might find useful as well. The three key things I would say to you are turn the compliance information into traffic lights. Okay, green is good, orange is about to expire, it expires. So it's an insurance policy and it's within its 12-month period, it's green. A month ago it's orange, and if it's gone over, it's 12. So just keep it red and green, such that if you're sharing the system with somebody like in security or reception, they can pull up the information quickly. And you know what? If we don't have everything green or in certain screens, then they're not coming on site. What is it that you're checking? Okay, you need to define that yourself. Safety statements, insurances, licenses, equipment certificates, safety data sheets. Okay. Risk assessments, I'll come back to that in a minute. You might even put in a pre-qual questionnaire. That's where you can get the contractors to come in and answer certain questions before they do business with you. Okay, and these some clients here, they go through like 10-15 pages of them. Okay, but what you can do here is sometimes these are managed by procurement. You can bring them out and bring them into your own system, and maybe just get the contractor to update what needs to be updated on a yearly basis then, because if they only have to update 2 or 3 bits, it's a whole lot easier. One example, the other bit that's inside there, I would say, is on as well as vendor rating, because with your own contractors, do you rate them in terms of gold, silver, bronze, or approved, not approved, blacklisted, something like that, where you can then look at the performance of your contractors and see who might need help. So going back on the main thing, I would say the ability to look at all of these things and color coding and get in the information just about company details, and then about your employees as well, contractor employees, and just have that. The next big one I would say down here is your reports, and you want to get the right report. So think about what information is needed by security every day, and it might be just something simple: the contractor company, the employee name, insurance, and induction training. That's simple. Okay, whereas maybe for facilities they might need a bit more. So get the right reports to the right people at the right time. That's the moment. One couple of challenges we see out there as well a lot is where people come in under the risk assessment method statements. We ourselves bring that in under the same platform, so it comes through and you just put in a review process for risk assessment method statements here as well. So just if you can incorporate everything, all the ways you're engaging with contractors, put that in and have simple review, reject processes, and make it easy for contractors to bring the stuff in. That's I think where that'll make your lives a bit easier as well. So I think they're just some of the key things. And the last one is looking at the relationship. 1 is a primary contractor, 2 is a subcontractor, 3 is a subcontractor, and down here we know that the secondary contractor links back to the main contractor, back to the client. We want to know, because it doesn't matter if they're tertiary, it's subcontractor, you need their information and you have to manage it. One other bit I just want to mention too is that when we're coming through and we're looking at work permits per se, actually just before I do that, online training before I come in, just build up your profile for them. We use landing pages, and we basically build into this landing page the instructions for the contractor, what they have to do, what they have to upload, licenses, insurances, and stuff like that. And then for the contractor employee, they can click a link and they can go over and they can just do the training. And the advantage of doing training before they come on site is they're doing it in their own time at their own cost. So when they arrive on site, they do a full day's work for you rather than losing an hour and a half. And it's very easy to move this stuff online and just get the whole stuff just done, so they can do it. And you're teaching them about your facility before they come in. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. There's a big movement over COVID. The last one I just say is about the work permit per se. When you can come in, and obviously you want the visibility of the permits and the status as you go through the day, but within the work permit, have a think about, is there some way you can get information about a particular contractor? I'll just come over to one over here. Maybe is there some way that if you're working with a particular contractor and they're on your portal or you're on your Excel sheet, if the information is out of date, can you know it? So I'll just give one example here. We've linked our own work permit system to the portal. So if the contractor isn't on it, they don't get a permit. And equally, if they are on it and there's a red dot behind the name, that indicates that something's out of date. It could be a license, a permit and stuff. So again, just purely advisory inside in that. So coming back into the thing, if you can link that information over to access control, get real-time checks about the status of contractors before they come on site, that'll just make the whole thing easier for you as well. So there's technologies out there that can help in this area. Okay, so some tips coming in. All green and no site entry. So what I mean by that is, if you are using the traffic light system, okay, and you could just have a simple screen for security or reception, and it's just maybe safety statement or manual insurance induction, and 3 of them good to go. 1 red, no discussion, you're not coming on site. Clarify who the local point of contact is for each contractor, because again, that's another thing. If you're bringing in lots of contractors, you need to delegate it down a level. Say, well, okay, Billy brings in 6 of them, Mary brings in 11 of them. And then all of a sudden, it's up to Mary and Bill when they're dealing with their contractors. If they see some information going out of date as well, they too can reach out to the contractor and say, look, guys, some of the stuff is going out of date. We need you to engage. And equally, if they want to bring in a new contractor, they have to get them on board and make sure all the stuff is on board. So there's responsibilities for different people across your organization as you roll out your system. And you have to get this kind of interdepartmental approach inside there. Okay, clearly identify what you want and also the intervention, what you're going to do if something's out of date. Okay, so if you turn up and you haven't done the training or insurance is out, you're not coming on site today. Integrate with work permits and hardware if possible. Okay, if you have that available and stuff like that, just think of some ways of joining the dots with the info you have. Generate lots of KPIs, reports, have the right information to the right people at the right time, always up to date. Reward good performance. I think that's back to the vendor rating. If you do look at a lot of contractors, most of them will keep the information up to date, and you want to reward the good performers and not just always be looking for the bad one. By nature, I think in audits we always tend to be a little bit negative there as well. Maybe do the pre-quals. That's where procurement come in. Maybe they could come in. And you could, because sometimes when you fill out these forms for procurement, they disappear down a rabbit hole and you don't see them again. Maybe you could keep some of that information and just keep it updated on a regular basis. Non-disclosure agreements is another one. The way we manage that actually is we build them into the online training. So you get it's not just business to business. You're actually getting it down to the employee level. So my point is the business isn't signing off on behalf of 400 employees. Each contractor, and when they do the training, they have to accept the NDA or else they can't complete the training. And it's just a simple thing that, if you come on site and you see something that's, what we're doing, we don't want you going down the road to our competitor and telling them about it. It's just so that's it. What you see on site stays on site. Another one would be, so linking in maybe with the finance department. If you have contractors and certain things are in the red, like their insurance, or maybe the safety manual or something like that, what you can do there is just have simple reports for them and say, look, if anything's red, you need to delay giving them a purchase order inside there. So when you start doing things like that, you see marked, it's like speeding, you could have all the speeding rules in the world, but when you hit people with fines and penalties, that's when people slow down. So coming into the next one, if anybody wants help, we just mentioned we do provide tools in a range of those areas, and for big or small companies, it doesn't really matter. And a lot of in your own approach, whatever you're doing, just have a look at what are the technologies out there that can help you. We're lucky to work with some big companies out there, but it really doesn't matter. We work with quite small companies as well. It's the same principle across the board for all of them. So just to recap inside there, ISO 45000, you've got a number of standards inside, or you got a number of clauses, mention contractors in all of them, okay? Look at your departments and get people inside. So you in health and safety, if that's your background, yes, you can help and understand what the requirements are and help document it, but EH&S will not be the people bringing them in. So you have to then get engagement across it, and that brings in security, as I said, maybe procurement, maybe finance as well, and let people know you can't bring in, if you need a contractor, you can't just pick up the phone book and bring in who you want. Those days are gone. We have to prove them. Equally then for the contractors, once you've done that, you have to work with them and tell them, folks, we're warning you now, don't turn up on site if this is red, and you have to enforce it to the point that if you're expecting security to turn around, you have to back them. You can't have rules and then all of a sudden, sure, it's fine. Okay, so you want to make sure that if the rules are there, that they're going to be respected as well. But it's all extremely doable. I suppose that's the good thing. I had to go back there actually for the thing. Gordon said their traffic light system quite useful, and all parties keep the information up to date. Yeah, absolutely. Our approach normally is we keep the contractors keeping the information up to date. It's like in our approach, we do the pizza pie. We break the pizza pie up. Each contractor gets the slice of the pizza. They have to keep it up to date themselves. Clients can do it in certain situations, but why? I mean, you have to run your own business. Just get the contractors to keep it up to date and work the traffic lights as well from there. So any questions or anybody else inside there? What else? You can actually unmute as well if you wanted. If you think of anything after the call as well, feel free to shoot through an email or anything like that. We're delighted as well afterwards. As I said, do complete, if you haven't done so already, the quick score app where you get a score out of 100%, 16 questions, 3 sections. It shouldn't take you more than 2 or 3 minutes to do it. But you get a non-screen score, you'll get an email, and on the email, if you check it doesn't go to spam, but in the email, you have the option to download a PDF report, and the questions you didn't score well on will be, like if you're saying you're not doing something, we're giving you suggested tips. It's completely for your own information inside there. But I do that as a thing. But if you have any other questions, we have much more detailed versions of that as well. And if anybody wants to come back to me after, I have an Excel sheet of the typical factors that people might use, and maybe the company details and employee details. I have that in an Excel sheet as well, or obviously we've our own tools and whatnot too as well. So I hope you found it useful. If there's no other question, I'll work on getting the recording out in the next couple of days as well. And as I said, we're doing these each month. If you have any colleagues or anybody else who can benefit it, we always appreciate the referrals inside there. We have another one in 2 weeks' time, and it's under competency, ISO45001, managing competency for employees and contractors. They're the two that we're going to be focusing more specifically on that. It's a bit shorter, there's kind of less to cover on it, but we're going through some tools and techniques as well in that one. Thanks, Bodjan, for the feedback. It's always nice when you get some interaction inside there. I hope you get the pronunciation of your of the name, and Jim, no problem. Thank you. And as I said, we're doing them each month, and if you have suggestions for other ones, be delighted to take them on board as well. And just one final note, we have a new community. It's we're built it, and it's basically for helping companies who are on the journey of ISO 45001. They're basically, we have a tool where we take them through the standard, and we explain what, for example, we break it down like policy, why you need a policy. Then we go through what the standard wants about a policy. We have an option then, if somebody wants it done for you just for a few dollars, they can download a sample policy. But the way we're doing it for the other clauses, we're going to teach people about auditing, and then you can use the module in auditing. We have modules on how to do audits. We have modules on risk assessment. You can get inside there. You can just use that module yourself then as well and go practice and do what you want to. So we're trying to get people more aware of what the standard is. If that's of use, personal, you can message me in the chat or shoot me an email later. We send you the invitation. We're helping, and I think the reason is for people. You could say, is it just for people who are seeking certification? Yes, it would help you, but in certain companies, people are doing they already have the standard, and a manager retires or somebody else moves into management position, and they now have to look after ISO. And in that case, we're helping them because we work in the areas of quality management, health and safety, environmental, food safety, information security. So, and all these standards, they're all the same. There's of all the 25,000 standards in the world, they all have one 4-letter word inside them, and that word is risk. So we're just managing risk, just with different umbrellas over them inside. So once again, everybody, thanks for your time this afternoon. And if you do want to reach out there's an email, dan@checknetwork.com. Some numbers, or go visit our website. There's a QR code there if you want to scan it. And you can book, we're offering just a few 15-minute or just short calls to help you if you wanted, or if you wanted any of the checklists or any of the content from here today, delighted to help you as well inside there. And look forward to maybe meeting you again on a call in the future. Thanks very much.